You are now listening to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast. And this is your best friend's best friend, Chidozie Okafor, ready to take you on another journey. Are you with me? Because I'm ready. Let's get it. This episode is sponsored by Nello Effect, a coaching and consulting service that helps people turn mindfulness into action as they navigate the dating world as well as their relationships. Follow on Instagram at nello.effect and find more information in the episode description. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of I Think I Love My Wife podcast. And I'm ecstatic to have our guest today, LaDarius Campbell. This is Mr. Range himself, the inspiration of the Within Range collection at JCPenney. I'm going to let him talk about that in detail soon. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that I'm super excited about having him on here. He has a unique story that I think you guys will learn a lot from. While we waiting for it, let's just get him started. LaDarius, what's good, man?
What's going on? Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me, man. I really
Listen, I'm happy. I knew you were coming. I knew you wasn't gonna slight on the style,
for sure,
the swag. And so, if y'all know me, you never see me put more than the collared shirt on.
The suit is fire.
However, I had to dust it off because I knew he was gonna be here. So if it's a little tight, I haven't worn this in a while. But yeah. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great, man. I'm excited to be here again. I'm ready to dive into this. I'm just ready to dig deep, for real.
Cool. Well, as you may know, we're gonna start off with just some questions. Let the audience get to know you.
For sure.
How long have you known your wife?
I've known my wife since March of 2018.
2018. So you're going on 6 years of knowing her.
Almost 5. Oh yeah, 6 years. 6 years. 5 years.
And how long would you say? Well, walk us through that story. Like how long? What I want to know is, and I'll let you pick how you want to say it. Walk us through the phases. Like, when did you meet? Did you talk to her immediately? When did you guys start dating for real? And then when did you propose?
Okay, so I met her March of 2018 at a Bible study, actually.
It's Lit Bible Study.
Lit Bible Study, exactly.
Lit Bible Study. It's a great Bible study. They stream live if you can't make it.
Stream live on Instagram every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Beehive is where it's located at. Great Bible study. So I met her there initially. And we were like, I didn't really know her like that. I really didn't build a relationship with her until later in 2018. Actually, I became her accountability partner through Lit. They assigned us to be accountability partners, and she didn't like me when she saw me.
I don't like your accountability.
Yeah, it's because I was really kind of getting my footing in the faith, trying to figure it out. But I was very much so kind of wild. I went to Greece for 12 days, crazy party, and she was like, "Who did y'all link me with? Who is this man?" But I met her then, and then on the latter end of the year is when we really started to get closer. And that was also simultaneously as I was really taking my relationship with Christ a bit more serious. So those two things kind of paralleled.
Yeah, parallel convergence seems like.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So we got closer.
And so you guys meet in the early part of 2018?
2018.
Towards the end of 2018. At least you start finding interest. Do you communicate that interest at that time?
So what happened was, as we became accountability partners, we started being more intentional with our accountability partner relationship. And we looked up and we were together for 11 days straight. We saw each other for 11 days straight. But in that relationship, we kept boundaries up because we were trying to make sure we were, being intentional friends, but not crossing boundaries.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But when we realized we were together for 11 days straight, we realized there's something more here, and we need to either define what that is or take a step back.
Yeah.
Because clearly
it can't be what it's doing. It can't
exactly.
be
And she was months out of a relationship, and I was maybe I think at that time I was either still in a relationship or maybe months out of a relationship myself at the time. And from there, we were spending that time together. And then after that, we defined it as okay, we want to lean into this more and figure out what this is. Let's start dating intentionally. Yeah. Once that happened, we were pursuing each other, dating intentionally, of course, still keeping boundaries. We wouldn't stay over each other's houses for after a certain point in time, it was very trying to keep things within the proper scope of things. And we didn't do a perfect job at it at all.
Oh, no one's perfect. And I imagine, at least to your point, if you think about societal standards, right, of what dating, talking, getting closer looks like.
Yeah.
You guys are also in, I would say, correct me where I'm wrong, pivotal points in your life where you guys are intentionally trying to grow your relationship with Christ, so
Yes.
that what you're hearing in terms of boundaries is also impacting how you're shaping the engagement between you guys.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that that's one of the key pieces for our growth together has been like before we met each other, we both had made the decision to really take our relationship with Christ seriously first. And then once that was done, we met. And it's like everything that we did in relation to building our relationship that was the foundation of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like those boundaries were like, for me, it was new. Cause like when I broke up with the person that I was dating, I was doing that with the expectation of God's about to have me single for like a long time, because the person that I broke up with, I did it because I felt like God was calling me to be single for some reason. I just felt like I was convicted that like, I was like, he wants me to be single for a reason. And there was nothing wrong with this woman. Like by worldly standards, amazing woman, and it hurt me to like really let her go.
Those are never easy conversations when they didn't do anything wrong, but you were making the decision for the best interest of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like really not even for myself. It's like for what I felt God was telling me, the direction he wanted me to go into. So when that happened to me, I'm like, I have to have this tough conversation. I have to like really break my own heart basically. And like from there, that experience, I was like, I don't want anything else unless God brings it. So my heart was like kind of like hardened from like if it's not from you, I don't want to even think about like entertaining it. So when my wife came along, it was like almost so natural to like soften my heart up, which is like what made me realize that a part of the reason what made me realize like that's the woman that God had for me, because my heart was once hardened in this area because I didn't want to have to sacrifice somebody else and hurt myself and somebody else along the way. So when she came along, it was just like this natural process of like softening of my heart, and like that's kind of like how it went.
Gotcha. So early 2018, you guys meet. Towards the end of 2018, there's this understanding that there's something more there.
Exactly.
There's work to be done to establish boundaries.
For sure.
Explore what that could be. I imagine you guys start dating intentionally.
Exactly.
When do you propose?
So I proposed to her, I want to say May 10th. Of 2019.
Oh, so literally within a year of meeting her, you proposed.
I proposed to her.
So a lot of people might say that's fast.
Yeah.
A lot of people being just me,
Absolutely.
But because I'm a person that believes that it's important to see people in seasons. And seasons of life, not seasons of the weather.
Yeah.
and to really know who you're dealing with, you can't always manufacture that, or you're. What I would say, you let me know if I'm wrong.
Okay.
You're moving forward with a lot of faith.
Absolutely.
And to me, I have all the faith in God.
Yeah.
But I don't have a lot of faith in people I don't know well.
Absolutely.
And so, I guess what I'm inferring in what I'm hearing is that you are moving forward in a lot of faith.
Absolutely.
Not only in what you knew of her as a person, but the fact that, like you said, God had softened your heart for this individual. There was a purpose behind that. So that might have compelled you to move as quickly as you did.
Yeah, I would say God had let me know that she was the woman that he had for me by her being able to get as close to me as she was. Okay. And I think that what happens is like what you said about like seeing people, and you have to see people in seasons, right? It's like that is true. And I understand the logic behind that. But I think that for me, a lot of, again, the way that I move is biblically based, right? And the Bible talks about this scripture in Ephesians where it's talking about how a man leaves his mother and father and he cleaves to his wife and they become one flesh. After that, it then says, this is a profound mystery. So it talks about marriage being a mystery. And what I think happens a lot of times when it comes to like trying to see people in seasons is that we're trying to gather information and logical information to make this calculated judgment on, is this the person I need to be with? But at the end of the day, marriage is a mystery. You can't create a scenario where you're going to see somebody in every scenario you're going to be in
sure.
a marriage,
Yeah.
right? And I think that like, yes, there are things that you may want to see how they handle certain things, but what I've come to realize in my pursuit in life, my pursuit in Christ, and in marriage as a whole is that a lot of times the way that I perceive things is saturated with a lot of things that it really shouldn't be saturated with because of my past experiences, because of my trauma. So the lens that I'm viewing what I think I need is based off of things that may not need to be factored in.
Yeah.
So that's why you say I move in faith. I do, because I have a very intimate understanding that I don't know what's best for me.
Got it. No, that's I think that's truly insightful to have that awareness.
Yeah.
And I want to dig a little bit into that. But you said that, you know, there was a lot of things that you experienced and trauma that was maybe tinting the view that you had. Care to elaborate on any of those things?
I would say just as a whole, I think we go into marriage when it comes to like what we want with this mindset of like with this dynamic of like what we've been through in the past and our past experiences and what they have informed us of. Like for me, for example, like I have a huge motherhood wound. Like me and my mom did not have a great relationship growing up. Because of her, like I lack a lot of empathy, you know, at times. And it's like for me going into marriage, it's like I had to be careful not to think that like my wife is responsible for filling in the gaps that I have from my motherhood wound. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think for me going into it, I wanted to be cautious of that is what I would say. So I think when I went into marriage, I was cognizant of that possibly happening before I proposed. I think that was because I had such a significant amount of my walk with Christ being established so much. So it kind of like, I don't want to say I had a significant lens, but it was there for sure. When it comes to what I expected out of marriage, it was there. And I can go into like detail of like what those things were.
Yeah, for sure.
If you want me to go into detail with that. So I would say one thing that I had expectations of, what I feel like a lot of men do, is like the frequency of sex, right? One thing is I want it as much as possible, multiple times a day.
On demand. No.
Yes, exactly. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, that's something that came from, as a man, me not knowing how to communicate, because that's intimacy.
Yep.
Like sex is intimacy, but intimacy for me was what I realized is all about communication. You know what I'm saying? As a man, and I think a lot of men don't know how to really communicate on an intimate level. You know what I'm saying? And it's like when I went into marriage and it wasn't as frequently as I wanted to, I'm like, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of times what happens is we feel like when something's wrong, it's the other person. And it's like having to turn that mirror on to be like, there's not something wrong with her not meeting this demand. There's something wrong with the way you're trying to meet it. With it being this physical thing.
Yeah.
And it's like turn a mirror on myself to realize there's other ways to fulfill this desire for intimacy that you have. That's ultimately what it boiled down to. I want to feel close. Yeah. And that's not something that I can expect her to give to me if I haven't gotten it from my relationship with Christ first. So it's like that like learning how to communicate more with him, so I can learn to communicate more with her. And yes, sex is a part of that communication and that intimacy, but it's not the sole thing that I put the weight on. Like, you know, like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What I hear you saying is that there was obviously a gap, right?
Yeah.
And the way you knew how to fill that gap in your growth with your relationship with Christ, in your evolution as a man, you realize that there's more than one way to fill that gap.
Yeah, exactly.
However, you are only anchored on the way you knew.
Exactly.
And that might not have been the healthiest way.
Exactly.
And so if we take it back to your comment around, I don't know if I was making the best decision for me.
Yeah.
Until you strengthened your relationship with Christ and took your cues from where he was directing you.
Exactly.
Some of that's how you bridge it, right? Like me recognizing what I've learned with Christ has guided me to make the decisions based off how I either instinctually made decisions or that's all I knew at the time to make decisions.
Exactly.
I just think I commend you on one, communicating that.
Yeah.
But two, like the awareness. I agree that men don't always know how to communicate things effectively. There's this sense of why do I have to communicate it. This should be automatic.
Yeah, 100%.
And then there's also when it's not. I think the thing that I like that you said is that, you know, there's nothing wrong with her that I'm not getting what I need. It might be the demand itself is off, right? And having the ability to communicate that to then understand, okay, there's a difference between when in situations, right, where you don't get what you need, and where do you point blame? Or is there blame at all? Like sometimes stuff just happens and there's no one to assign fault to. It's just the way the marbles fell.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And I think that it's crazy because like now we're getting into expectations when it comes to like what you want. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that ruins marriages a lot is because we feel valid in our expectation, right? This is what I want. This is what I feel like I deserve. And I think that like when we're not getting that, it's easy to place that blame. And like you said, like it's not a matter of, you know, blame to really place more than it is. There's a gap, right? I think that when it comes to what you expected versus what you're getting, it's like there's a gap between those two things in marriage at times. And we assign things or we fill things with that gap and that silence and that you create your own narrative. And it may not be a true narrative because what I feel like happens is like, what people don't consider in marriages is like before we meet, we've lived entire lives. We've had entire experiences. We've had good, bad, ugly, indifferent when it comes to dating, when it comes to friendships, when it comes to being raised. We've all had these different experiences. And to make those things collide and work in a like harmonious like way where it just works, it takes work.
Oh, for sure. It doesn't feel good all the time.
It doesn't. So it's like I think that like being able to be introspective enough to be like, we are just different. Let me figure out how to embrace that and try to bridge the gap versus like calling the gap negative.
Yeah, no, I you know, there's a verse in the Bible that talks about how God prunes the leaves. And I've definitely heard different preachers, pastors talk about in following the Lord that as he prunes you, it doesn't always feel good, but it's a necessary feeling or necessary process to be better or what you're called to be.
100%.
And I think that falls in a relationship, in marriage, because you're taking two flawed individuals and trying to become one.
Exactly.
And there's like a gearing of, you know, a blending of the gears, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't always fit. And so sometimes you have to grind them down to then fit into the right pockets.
That's a good
And that grinding, although there's a process of the grinding to occur.
Yeah.
Whether that's tough conversations, whether that's moments of where you don't feel good about the other person or their actions.
Yes.
Whether it's the process of that person having the moments of reflection, right? And then coming back to you had maybe the I told you so moments, right?
Yeah.
All that is the grinding of the two of you guys trying to become one to fit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel good. And so I'm always like hesitant and concerned when I hear people want to go into these deep, serious relationships and want like an easy experience because none of it is easy. Always like the process in and of itself, when you describe it, I don't think you look at the whole the comprehensive nature of it and say, oh, that was easy. When you go look at 30 years of marriage, like that was an easy marriage. Or you're like, that was all fun. There's pockets. Like, I think Michelle said for 5 years or 10 years she didn't like Barack. Imagine that relationship that everybody admires and aspires to have. For 5 years she's like, I ain't like that man. But she was still there. She still supported. And I'm sure there were times where Barack didn't like Michelle as much. But I think we have this view that it has to be like good all the time. And there's not a challenging, tension-filled, and even sometimes experience that like feels adverse that we have to go through in order to get to where we want to be.
Yeah, that's real. I think that the culture really has beat into our heads like you marry for happiness. Marriage is about happiness, right? Like, so when you're trying to go into picking that person, it's like you're calculating how happy can they make me, right? And it's like one thing that I've heard a lot in my journey of marriage is like your not just happiness, because happiness is fleeting, but your joy is your responsibility only. And it's like I think that people tend to try to pick people who can like feel that temporary happiness, but like it's never going to be sustainable. Nobody's going to be able to continuously make you happy if you haven't done the self-reflection work to heal yourself. It's not going to happen. So it's like I think being sold this dream of like, I'm going to find this perfect person, it's going to make me happy for the rest of my life. It's like you're setting yourself up for failure.
For sure. I don't think to your point, I don't think anybody is responsible for anybody else's happiness and joy. Now, someone can impact your degree of happiness and your degree of joy, but they're not responsible for it. So if you don't have any in yourself, then but you may be at a 12 and they may take it down because of things that are happening.
Yeah.
But they're not responsible for it. They can enable it, they can accelerate it, and they can also decrease it. But the foundation of where your joy, your livelihood in terms of your experience for your desire for life, how much joy and happiness you get out of it is your responsibility in creating an environment that allows for that.
Yeah, I think that the impact piece of them being able to impact your joy and your happiness, I think for me, what I've realized is if I can't take joy in the things that may traditionally negatively impact my joy or happiness, I sometimes need a perspective shift, because a lot of times when I experience things that quote unquote negatively impact my joy or happiness, it's things that my wife just may need help healing in, right? So it's I'm upset that you aren't healed because it's impacting me. Yeah. But really it's flipping my mind to be actually, this is an opportunity for me to help her heal. So let me take joy in that process. But a lot of times what happens is you're not operating how I want you to operate, so it's impacting my joy. Yeah. And it's I'm upset with that impacting me versus being able to. And
that's the tension part, right?
Yeah.
The grinding of it. Because in the same train of thought, you can also say, well, what was frustrating me or causing that discomfort or whatnot is a aspect of healing that needs to happen on her end. Well, you can then go on top of that and say, well, for her to be better for us, she needs to heal. So that joy gets accelerated, right?
Yeah.
She can't help you or be an accelerator of the joy if she's not healed. So how do I help my teammate be her best self, so that it's like tennis. If there's a way I can help if I'm playing, doubles. Yeah. If there's a way to help my teammate, we have a better chance of succeeding. And we think about that way, then some people needed to connect to them too. Yeah. And so when you connect it that way, well, I'm in consulting. Yeah. And I'll come into places where someone's been doing something early in my career, we did a lot of implementation. Yeah. And someone will come in, they've been doing their job for 20 years, and we're telling them, hey, you got to change all this stuff. And no one likes change. Yeah. I could tell you what the change management process would be. They think we're enemies. Then why are you here? Yeah. And I would have to communicate to them and then show them my success is tied to yours. Yeah. If you're not good at what you're doing, if I can't help you be your best, then I'm not going to succeed. Yeah. And I think we have to look at relationships that way, especially when it's those tension points. Because it then becomes, this is your problem. You need to fix that so we can be good. It's no, this is our problem.
Yeah, now. Together. Yeah.
And whatever way, some journeys are meant for you to do on your own, but how can I support you in having that journey on your own is the question, right? And
I think as men, man, what happens is we get these visions because we're very driven as men. Just naturally we're driven to get to this goal, to get to this solution, to get all of that. And it's you may have a vision for even the future of your household, right? And it's a great vision and it's amazing, but we get so wrapped up in trying to execute it and arrive and get there that we miss out on how our significant others feel in the process, right? Because it's I'm trying to sprint toward this goal and I'm dragging my wife, and it's and it's she's getting beat up while I'm trying to achieve this goal. But what God may want to do in the season is slow down. Forget the goal, forget the end result, forget where I'm trying to take you and focus on her. Yeah. Because when you focus on her and help her heal in this situation that she may be in, that's not allowing her to run as fast as you, may reveal something about you that I want to heal too. Oh yeah. And it's because I feel we get so wrapped up in that fast pacedness. It's
that's something I'm working on too. I'm a destination guy more than a journey guy. Yeah. And it's tough. Over time in the relationships, I've realized there is value in the journey.
Absolutely.
I'm not in my transformation where I say there's more value than the destination. However, I do. Before I would say, well, why does it matter how we got there? You want us to get to this place. We got to this place. It's a win. Yeah. And through experience, you learn no, the way you get there has some value and should be respected and honored too, because whether you appreciate it or not, that matters for who you're riding there with too.
Yeah, absolutely.
This episode is sponsored by Nello Effect, a coaching and consulting service that helps people turn mindfulness into action as they navigate the dating world as well as their relationships. Follow on Instagram at nello.effect and find more information in the episode description. Cool. I know we kind of diverse too, but so I want to get back to some of the demographic questions.
For sure.
So you guys have been married now for
Almost 5 years.
Almost 5 years. What do you do for a living? What does your wife do for a living?
So I'm a men's fashion and lifestyle influencer and now designer.
Say it again and slow for the people.
I'm a men's fashion and lifestyle influencer, and I'm also now a designer because I did a collection with JCPenney.
This man did a whole collection with a top retail company.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I just want to pause and give you your flowers there.
Thank you, man.
We can talk about it a little bit because I would say there's levels. Well, we know there's levels to everything,
Absolutely.
Right? And in this world of social media and influencers, there's so many people talking about their influencers.
Yeah.
Just like people say I'm a consultant. It's like, nah, you're not consulting with the big boys. It's just different levels.
Yeah.
And so I would say, from what I've seen and know of you, you are a true influencer.
Absolutely.
In the space that you are working in.
Yes, 100%.
And a lot of people that, project as influencers. One, I would love to get your take on, like, in your journey, at what point did you feel like you were truly, like, an influencer? And then walk us through the collaboration with JCPenney.
I think it's funny you asked that because it actually took me a while to really even call myself that. I think it's because of like the disbelief of like what was actually happening at the time. So it took me a while. I think really when I quit my job that I was at for 8 years in corporate America, that I actually loved, by the way, shout out to Schneider. But when I left that in 2022, November of 2022, is when it really dawned on me because I was able to see it outpace my my income in corporate America and sustain my family and the abundance that I saw come from it. I think is when I really it really sunk in for me. So I would say at that point for sure. I still kind of like in disbelief that this is happening.
I just want to highlight it because I do a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm a podcast host. I have a real podcast, but I recognize there's levels, and no one's knocking at my door yet. Because some of it's like you get validity. Someone like validates the work that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you didn't need JCPenney to put the stamp on it, but it puts a stamp on it. I don't need someone to put a stamp. I have a podcast, right?
Yeah.
However, if somebody wants to sponsor and put me on their platform and pay me for it, that puts an additional stamp.
Mm-hmm.
So, walk me through how the JCPenney thing happened, because you've been talking about you've been having the whole range moniker.
Yeah, for sure.
You were able to leverage that within. Hopefully, you trademarked it. But
absolutely.
You were able to leverage it within the campaign that you're doing with JCPenney. How did that come about?
So they actually reached out to me October of 2022, and it came about. It was an inbound deal where they came about. Had to sign the NDA initially. Oh my God, that was the hardest thing. Having to hold on to that information after they reached out. So they reached out and they were extended the opportunity to me.
So you had no relationship with them at all. It was just they just saw what you were doing.
I never did a partnership with them. I did a partnership with a lot of people before they reached out, but they were actually not one of them.
Did they have an idea what they wanted to do, or it was like, hey, we want to work together? What does that look like?
So they actually came with the entire they said that they wanted to do a collection with me directly, and from there. They told me some work that I did in the past, kind of allowed them to see how see themselves in my brand, right? So from there, we kind of went through the semantics of getting together on how I would actually design it. So fast forward, I flew to New York after signing the contract, negotiating back and forth. Signed the contract, flew to New York to actually design it, picked out the fabrics, the textures, the patterns, graphics, all that stuff, colors. And then from there, it went into this production mode. We're creating prototypes. And then after that, we kind of went into the finalization of everything and then mass production. And then we did the actual production shoot, the big shoot for that, which is a lot of fun. And yeah, man, I think one thing I want to say about this partnership though specifically is you're speaking about how you don't have to have somebody have a stamp of approval on what you're doing. I truly believe that, because when you stay true to what you're doing, why you started what you started, you don't need that stamp of approval. But the people that come along as you're continuing to execute just naturally kind of either fit or don't. And you can make that call as a business owner, as the podcast owner. And one thing I love about this collaboration with JCPenney is that our the morality, the feel, the people, like it all just fit like a puzzle piece, man, where it's like we just align so much to where like as people, we align so much to where the work itself really just felt like extra.
Yeah.
And it really was just like relationship building at the end of it all.
Sure. The consultant in me wants to get into specifics, so
Yeah.
you share what you feel comfortable sharing.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious, as someone, I know you probably have done partnership deals before, right?
Yeah.
But I imagine this undertaking is a lot different.
Absolutely.
And so, as someone you're still getting your footing as an influencer, you're still navigating, unknown territory.
Mm-hmm.
As you were starting or embarking on this new undertaking,
Yeah.
I can imagine how many pages the NDA was. I can imagine you trying to feel like me as an individual negotiating with an entity like that.
Yeah.
And trying to understand your value, so they're not just like trying to give you some deal, but knowing like you have agency to do that. Did you have people you could lean on outside of just like the attorney to make sure they're not hulling you?
Yeah.
Or did you how did the agency to negotiate, making sure that you were protecting yourself?
Yeah.
What did you leverage or harness to make sure you were doing right by yourself in that capacity?
I did have a small business lawyer that helped me a lot through the process, but I also reached out to other people in the industry as well to gauge, what they thought.
Yeah.
And some was helpful, some weren't so helpful. I also reached out to one of my mentors. He is a business owner himself, and he's been in the entrepreneur space for quite some time, but it was an opportunity that came about that was kind of hard for me to really price.
You have enough proxy. You have nothing
Yeah,
to gauge
exactly.
against.
And that's one of the things we don't talk about enough in entrepreneur space in general is like pricing as a whole is a science.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like,
There's so many models to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, for me.
Especially the consultant in me is like, okay, how we figure this stuff out?
Exactly. Because like I've done partnership endorsement deals. We want this many reels, for this amount of time. And it was like this clear cut, and this is a bigger scope of a deal for me. So I really leveraged as much as I had in my hands to leverage, which is...
It's funny. I'm nerding out a little bit because it's funny. Like when you talk about it, I think about it like it's like a record deal.
Yeah.
In a sense, because if someone, especially if you're a new artist, someone's coming to you, usually it's kind of straightforward.
Yeah.
And they're hedging.
Yeah.
And so they may not give you what you deserve off top because they don't know if it's going to go. And it doesn't always protect you if it just pops.
Yeah.
And so you want to do stuff to protect you, but you don't want to lose out on this deal that could set you up. And so there's all these things, because then you hear about people in contracts for the record labels that are in these terrible contracts because they just didn't know and they wanted the deal, And then
that's real.
You realize, well, I signed up for all this stuff that didn't necessarily long term put me in the right position, and I popped.
Yeah, that's real. And I think that what's funny is like this was uncharted territory as a whole in the influencer space. JCPenney themselves have done like celebrity stylists. They've done celebrities themselves collections and collaborations with them. But to this scale, this is their first time doing a collaboration with the influencer. Likewise, it was the first time that I know of an influencer having a collaboration of a black male influencer having a collaboration of this scale. So like, even though I was leveraging the resources that I had, it's really the first of its kind in the industry as a whole. So like there was nuances with that, but I definitely think that for me, it boiled down to, of course, like faith, like I've been saying this whole entire time, is like praying about it, really trying to advocate for what I felt the demand of the project took and what I would be comfortable with. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of people try to like price gouge to where it's like, like let me get as much as I possibly can, which for me, I'm really like, I love the collaboration for what it was, but it's not all about money for me. Like for me, I've realized like it's deeper than money. It's about impact. It's about being able to serve my audience, like in a way that is very intimate, from being able to design something and create a solution on more than just this is what exists in the world. These are the clothes that exist in the world, and this is how you wear them. But how can I create a deeper solution to where I see a gap in fabrication, or I see a gap in being able to wear what you want to wear all day long and like create something by my own hands to fill that gap. So like for me, it was like I saw the ability to serve in that too,
No, I get it. And I wonder, because I want to bring it back to your household and your family, but to the degree you can share, or do you want to share, you can talk to the people.
Yeah, for sure.
Where can they get it? How long is the campaign going?
Yeah.
What's next, if anything next in relation to that?
Yeah, for sure. So the campaign is going to be going on until April. We may be extending a little bit longer.
2025.
At the end of April.
Oh, of this year.
Yeah.
You got your 2024.
Yeah,
Yep.
this year. So April of 2024 is when we're looking to end it at maybe a little bit longer. I'm going to let y'all stay tuned on that. And you can get it at 150 stores across America nationwide. You can also get it online. It's as small as a size small to as big as a 5X. We got big and tall. It's anything from suiting to crew neck t-shirts, cargos. It's really something for every man in this collection. There's also some unisex pieces for women as well. So
Cool. We'll have to check it out. I do want to know, because what I hear a lot in general, but I can imagine it's amplified in the influencer spaces, the degree social media can impact the relationship. Mm-hmm. And so to what degree or what challenges have you faced as you gain popularity with just you within the range series that you've have and built, and then this new opportunity that has, I would say, increased popularity to a degree? How is that? What are challenges you've have come up and you've had to navigate with your wife?
So I would say a lot of the trivial thing, like when you're like really operating with Christ and that's your foundation, I feel like a lot of the trivial stuff kind of don't really affect you as much. Like I've never like struggled with things like attention from women and stuff like that. But
they in the DMs though. I imagine.
It doesn't. I don't see it.
I hear you, and you've been on your walk.
Yeah.
But for the average person that is an influencer or starting or popular, and they're getting the attention. Yeah. When I say you don't have to respond to the attention, but it doesn't mean it doesn't come to you.
Yeah.
Like, what are some of the things that could, if you weren't in your walk, be a sore spot or area of contention?
I would say, like, I think that the attention that you get from it as a whole, whether it be from women or just people as a whole, can, and I've seen it go to people's head. You know what I'm saying? And thinking a lot bigger of themselves than they should. You know what I'm saying? And it's like kind of thinking that they're better than everybody else. And it's like, I feel like that's a barrier for me. Like, I don't ever want to block myself off from being able to commune with people. You know what I'm saying? And I think for me, I've seen, like, if you are getting that attention from women, or you're getting the recognition or whatever, I think it's very important to realize what is coming at you to add to you and what is coming to wreck what you have going on. I think it's very important to really view things from that scope, because what looks good on the outside may not be what's good for you on the inside, you know, or may not be good for the long term. So I think that, like, it's really important to look at things from that lens. What I have struggled with, I will say, is time management. Has been a very tough one, because starting out, I didn't really plan to create a whole entire business from doing this and operating in social media, but it turned into that. So, like, I started it as a hobby, passion project, and I had to turn on entrepreneur CEO mind, you know what I'm saying? And learn how to run a business, right? So I think that for me, I teeter and still to this day struggle with, like, time management for how much time and mental real estate I dedicate to refining my business versus refining my family. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
How does she respond to that? Because, you know, in business, entrepreneurship, I've dabbled in it, I've studied it. It is a 24-hour-a-day job in terms of things, especially until you scale, right? As you're thinking about it, trying to grow, there's always things you can be doing.
Absolutely.
And never enough hours in the day. And so I imagine, as you are trying to build this business, this entity, this brand, and also you have a family that sometimes the partner may not understand, especially depending on the background, what's all involved in it, to then appreciate the work. Now you're just off doing something, but I see that this is a requirement.
And it's for us too.
For us to be successful.
Yeah.
And so how do you, has there been any challenges in that regard? And
Absolutely.
How have you navigated, or are you trying to navigate that?
I think that initially I was not navigating it well, because I would be just like going and like trying to execute the vision that I saw and cultivating, and then look around and see that my wife is tired. She's exhausted. She's been picking up all this extra slack that I'm not doing because I'm grinding in this other area, right? And then it would eventually get to a point to where it's like she can't handle that anymore, and we're kind of like at odds. And then I would respond to that by like, oh, I need to kind of shift my focus back to this, you know? And it's gotten to a point now that we've been through that enough to where instead of me starting off and like, oh, I'm going to just go full throttle in certain things, instead I've been preparing her for the season, right? Like if I know like Q3, Q4, it's about to be crazy, you know? So like, let's prepare, let's figure out how we exactly communication, like what is this season going to look like? What is it going to require of me? What is it going to require of you? What happens when you do feel overwhelmed, you know, and like setting that up before we go into it. So when we go into it, we're more prepared and able to execute it in a way that's not as exhausting, like not being proactive instead of reactive with it all is what I think I've done a better job at in this season. But it took a lot of getting it wrong and both of us hitting our points of exhaustion before we got to where we are now and being able to be proactive in it.
No, for real, I get it. I know you don't have a ton of time, so I want to make sure that we get a chance to talk about, you know, your journey in marriage, fatherhood. Let's take a break, and then we'll bring you back next time. We can talk about more about your story and that.
Sure.
If you're liking what you see, if you want to hear more about LaDarius' story, his family, his journey, make sure you tune in next week. Until next time, you know what it is. I hope the conversation keeps going.